Hey Ramblers, before we start today's episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to stay up to date on the latest episodes, interviews, and all things startup. This episode, like every episode before it and after it, is brought to you in part by OffSource, your affordable one-stop solution for outsourcing all of your office work. If you or your team are constantly waitlisting important tasks for any reason, you're doing your company a disservice. Get the support you need by outsourcing to offsource tasks like HR support, admin, bookkeeping, social media, graphic design, web design, and so much more. You can go to the link in the description and visit offsource.tech. This is The Ramblings. Hey guys, welcome back to another wonderful episode of The Ramblings. I am your host, Angelo Roberts. I have today with us Jacie Target of Annam Sayer. She is the owner and founder of a holistic wellness practice. We have not had one on in an absolutely long time. So I think we're in for an amazing conversation. How are you doing today, Jacie?
I'm doing amazing. I spent my afternoon gardening in the sunshine, so I'm happy to be here, all refreshed.
What's going on? Where are you calling it from?
So I'm actually based in Fredericton, New Brunswick, so Eastern Canada. I'm about an hour north of the Maine border.
Oh, okay. I did see something about that on the website. How far is that from like Toronto or from, I guess, Michigan is where people drive up from? Oh,
Yeah, so I'm 15, 16 hours east of Toronto driving.
okay.
About 750 miles, give or take.
Okay.
And then another nearby larger city that some people know is Halifax. And that, but that's still another 4 hours. So I'm in a pretty, small rural area in general. The town I live in had 80,000 people in it, and it's one of the bigger ones in the area.
Oh, what? How did you end is that where you born in that area, or did you just happen to find that, like, go on vacation there and then fall in love with it?
No, I actually was raised in the vicinity and left and came back and left and came back, and the last time I left and came back, when I got back here, I met my now husband, and he has 3 beautiful little girls, and they live here, and their mom's here too, so now we're all here.
That's absolutely amazing. So we have had a couple of holistic healing people on here. I always like to have that question, as I mentioned, is the debate because I feel like there's going to be a debate today. I just love to get into this topic of holistic medicine, holistic healing, everything that's going on. So for those that don't know or haven't listened to any of the previous episodes where we've had like Reikis or holistic healers on or anything like that, what is a holistic healing, holistic health medicine, or and exactly what it is that you do at Annam Sayer?
Yeah, so as with most people who are in the healing realm, there's been like a pretty winding, twisting back and forth journey to where I am right now. I've got a background in counseling psychology. That's what my master's degree is in. And I also have certifications in Reiki. I actually train other people to do Reiki. And I work in kind of different areas of mental health and then the energetic health. Um, so Reiki specifically is an energy healing modality that channels, I call it like God energy, right? God to me is the energy of pure love that flows through everything when it's unobstructed. And human error gets in the way and obstructs things. And so the energy work that I do is really intentionally focused on bringing that pure loving energy back into the body, back into the energy field, back into the room that you're in, and allowing things to flow more freely, more openly, and with more vulnerability and heart. So from an
Okay.
energy standpoint, that's sort of one of the things that I do. And then also with the counseling background, I do a lot of different therapeutic modalities that are focused on embodiment, emotional regulation, nervous system function. I am a big fan of like the neuroscientific ways that we can heal and rewire our brain. And that actually is totally intertwined with the energy work. The deeper you go into the neuroscience, the more the energy work actually makes sense on a physiological level.
That's actually interesting that you say that because one of the things that me and the interns were talking about previously, when we were preparing for this particular conversation was what is the science behind like the energy work and Reiki, especially as someone that's went to college. If you're trying to explain it to, someone like me, I have no idea really what Reiki energy is. I understand the science of energy, like okay, kinetic energy, force of motion, XYZ, there's electricity, stuff going through my body, our brain. That's a like brain and mental awareness. That's a very, very, very real thing. But when someone talks about Reiki or the transfer of energy from like your being and like your brain and you're doing all of this like brainwave stuff, how do you break it down from a psychological or from a scientific standpoint for someone who doesn't necessarily, I guess, maybe believe in that thing. Like, for example, right? If ghosts are real, whether you believe in them or not, they're there. So, right, whether you believe in an energy source, that energy source is there. So how do you, to someone simple as me, explain like the science behind it?
Yeah. So, oh, I'm so glad you asked that question. It's been a long time since I've got to nerd out about this on an interview. Cool. One thing that I always will start with if people are asking that question is it's been proven over and over and over again that trees communicate with each other through different like chemicals that they release from their roots and their leaves. They'll grow around each other to make sure that the other trees get enough sunlight. They'll send out warning signals if one of them is being cut down or eaten so that the trees around them start to produce a chemical that makes their leaves bitter to try and protect them. And the human nervous system does the same thing.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So that's a lot of information for a simple person like me to take in at once. So trees communicate with other trees. Is this okay? I like to pull things from a bunch of random stuff I've heard. Is this how trees go about like that crowning effect essentially? So when they're able to like grow and grow just to the point of touching, but enough to allow for the growth of other trees.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, so how does the human mind translate that same process? How does that go for us then? How do we do?
So the human nervous system functions with the same degree of sensitivity that all of the plants and beings within nature do. Humans have gotten really good at using their cognitive brain to shut down these sensitivities and nuances of what we feel in our bodies. But when we get down to like a biological basis, if someone around you is afraid, your senses are going to pick up the pheromones, the chemicals, even the fact that their heart rate is heightened or their respiratory rate is heightened is going to impact on a subconscious level how you are feeling. It might trigger your system. I don't like to use the word trigger, that's really overused in the psychology world, but it might activate your system to think there may be a threat nearby and create a sense of hypervigilance. Like a deer that pops its head up and its heart rate starts going, all the deer around it immediately respond to that without knowing why. It's a protective mechanism. And
Okay.
it goes in the opposite direction as well. So if you essentially the person with the strongest grasp on their consciousness is the one that's affecting the people around them. So if you have a lot of people who are kind of unconscious of themselves or of their feelings, they'll get dragged in to the feelings of everyone around them. If you're with someone or you are someone who has a really solid foundation of your own nervous system, so you've processed a lot of emotions, you're able to stay really present, you're able to stay grounded, you feel truly safe in your body, the people around you will start to feel that because of that really deeply subconscious, ingrained response that we have to the nervous system of the person near us.
That makes so much more sense when you explain it like that. And I love that you explain it in that way because when you say that it's a protective system, it's something that the body does to alert you of danger or alert you of something that's going on based on external factors. And that we have the ability to get sucked into other people's energy based on them being poised with themselves. It makes complete sense how and why you're able to do this for business executives, because they need to be able to walk into a room and either not be swayed or drawn into other people's energy, but also they need to be able to command and bring other people into their energy. How did you find this kind of niche? How did you learn? Like, was this something that has always been that you've always been interested in? How did you find out about this level of energy and find this kind of knowledge to bring, I guess, as an intern mentioned it, spirituality with, you know, the physiology of things?
Mm. So I've definitely always been interested. Some may say I've always been obsessed with it. I remember being like 5, 6 years old and saying, I'm going to be a psychologist when I grow up. Like, I don't really know many kids who think that's the dream job, but I did. Um, and then, of course, I wanted to be a marine biologist and all those other random things. But I always had a really deep fascination for how people interacted with each other. I grew up in a pretty emotionally unstable environment. There was not a lot of consistency or safety. And that worked in my favor into what I do now because I had two choices essentially. As I got older, as I gained more autonomy, I got to choose, do I continue to live in a state of fear, anxiety, depression, anger, confusion, or do I figure out how to live differently than what I was exposed to? And I had this like, I truly believe that everyone is given some kind of gift in themselves that is just theirs to work with. And I believe for myself that gift was an unconditional belief that there's a better way to live. Even without having seen it, even without necessarily having been exposed to it in too much detail by others around me, there was this part within me that knew there had to be a better way and I'm going to find it.
That oh my gosh, that is a very I'm gonna dive into that real quickly because one of the things that I say that, especially if you have ever lived or are familiar with people that have lived in urban areas, that exposure is one of the key elements to it, like their trajectory on how success like what they would like to do when they grow up, right? If you don't know that you can be a doctor, if you don't know that there's options for you to be a dentist, if you don't know there's options for you to do so many other things that will allow for you to explore your passions and career, you just know work shut down. But you, since a very young age, and you said importantly, without having been predisposed to it, you had this feeling and you knew. What? How would you like? What is that like? I can only imagine it's the same calling as, you know, when we hear Brad Pitt or LeBron James or Kevin Hart talk about like doing stand up or playing basketball was like that's what it was. But you knew that they like living better was something that you just felt. How what is feeling of living better? Especially if you're not living better, right? You haven't been exposed to multi-million dollar yacht or true serenity and peace and quiet. If you haven't how did you have that inner fire of
The honest answer is I don't know how.
mm,
I really don't. And I actually had this conversation with my mother relatively recently. Her and I have both done so much growth and healing, and it's been really cool how parallel that's happened as we've both grown as people. And she is just one of the most incredible women that I've ever met. But one thing that she said to me was that recently in this conversation, she was like, you knew that there was a better way for us to live, and I never showed it to you. She's like, so she kind of asked me that, like, how did you have this understanding that it doesn't have to be this way? Because
Right.
it was just the home environment was not ideal. And all I can explain, if I were to try and say what it felt like, there's two things that it felt like. One was awful and painful because you know there's something better, but you're not in it. And that's really hard. But the feeling is, I always point to my chest when I talk about it. There was this deep pull in myself, in my heart, that always spoke. And the worse things got, the more loudly it spoke, that said, just, this isn't right. This
Just
is okay. This isn't normal, and it doesn't have to be. And it was that inner pulse that said, like, there's a way out, and all you have to do is find it. And
what
so
do
that's all I can say. So I don't really know how it was there other than it was a spiritual gift, like, truly, and it was, I don't even necessarily know that it was me, right? It was God, it was divine love, like, there was something really taking care of me and letting me know, like, you're gonna get out of this. There's a better way to live your life.
total curveball? I told you I'm always good for a debate, but I love doing for a bit, right? How do you then, especially as a coach, right? For someone who might have had a different calling, for someone who may not have had a feeling of I can do something better, they just know that, hey, I might be able to dance, I might be able to play basketball, I might be a great artist, right? They don't necessarily have a feeling of how something could be better. They just know I love to do something. For someone that doesn't have that same kind of I'll call it a blessing or privilege in this particular situation of knowing that there's going to be something better. How would you then define that same feeling that you had of it was had to be a divine love, something external that happened to you, but it doesn't happen to other people?
Mm. So it's interesting you say that because a lot of the people I work with are in that, what you just described. They're in a space of, they see other people around them succeeding or being really happy or, doing these things they want to do or adventuring, whatever. And they feel like, well, that's good for everyone else, but it's not for me.
Mhm.
Yet underneath it, I truly believe this. The only difference between me having that feeling and any of those other people having that feeling is if they've learned to listen to it. So I may even go and say that my gift wasn't the feeling itself, but my gift was being given the ears or the heart to hear it
Mm.
early on. Because when people are given the tool to come into their hearts, and when people are given the tools and the space to be really vulnerable with themselves, fragments of that feeling start to come to them. Pieces of that knowledge start to come to them. And it's usually really muddled and unclear at first. One example of someone who I'm currently kind of working through this process with just said the other day, I know now that I want to do something good in the world and I have no idea what that is. But even that is unknowing within yourself that there is something bigger for you. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, like you said, you're listening. It's kind of like a conscience. At some point, your con you may not have a conscience because you've chosen to ignore it for so long. But at one point, there was a little something that said, "Hey, maybe that's not the right thing." And so inside, we feel, well, maybe this is the right thing. Maybe there's something different. Now, what I'd like to do, especially because we had the interns on the call, is I'm going to shift this a little bit towards business because one of the big things, especially in the day age of not only social media and um, just how the internet has created so many opportunities, but we've seen, and I'm sure you've noticed this, there's been a rise of the coach or the influencer coach during the realm of social media, especially after the pandemic. A lot of mental health coaches, a lot of Reiki coach, just a very large rise in coaches across the board, business or not. You have been able to garner a $100,000, a full six-figure business. How do you then bring something that is a passion to the world of where you can now make money? Because it's one thing to have a passion, but not everyone is able to then turn that calling, turn their passion into something that's monetizable, right? You may be a nonprofit person, someone that is just, I am out here serving, helping with soup kitchens every single day. That might be your passion, serving in a soup kitchen. But that passion, at least from what I directly see, isn't going to be something that you monetize for a six-figure yearly kind of income. How did you then transition from it to be a passion, something that you felt in here, to now being a solid concrete?
Two things. One, true, and this sounds so cliche, and I think everyone who reaches any level of success says this, just like never giving up. I was, I had an idea of what I wanted to do. And every time I would reach a different level of that. So, I started off with just doing Reiki and energy healing, and like most people do not make a living doing that. And I was able to fully support myself in that at 23 years old. And that's pretty rare. It was a struggle at times. Like, I'm not saying I was, rolling in dough, but I was able to make a genuine business out of it. And it is hugely in part due to the fact that I was willing to work really hard. Um, with the understanding that I call it front loading, work really, really, really hard for a given amount of time, and then let yourself float for a bit.
Okay.
And then when you feel the urge to shift things up or to level up, work really, really, really hard for a bit, and then let yourself float for a bit. So I have, for myself, that's been a really critical process in growing my business. I don't want to be working 12-hour days, 6 days a week, every day of my life. I have personally no interest in that lifestyle. That's not why I started working for myself.
Okay.
However, if I want to be successful working for myself, there has to be periods of time where I am willing to sacrifice other things and hustle, and then I can kind of enjoy the payoff afterward.
I think that's such a like the blueprint of it. The way I like to do, my mom introduced me to something similar when I was younger. The way that she just was talking about how her work style is, right? She was a nurse. At one point, a very well paid nurse, and would work like bone to the bone for a full week, and then take a week off, and then repeat the cycle. Because it was, if I can work, let's just say 4 days and make what people would make in a week, I have now, like, as you had said, front loaded. So I'm not doing multiple 10-hour days. I've done it all on the back end, and I can now relax. How do you then explain that process to your peers who would have trouble emulating it? What are some of the nuances that you have to explain, especially for someone who would like or be interested in that lifestyle? What are some of the nuances or tips and tricks that you have to know and understand when living a lifestyle that is of such?
The most critical part is to understand your body and your cues mentally and emotionally and physically. So I, and actually, I'll just throw this in there really briefly. As women, because of our hormone cycle that runs throughout the course of a month, there are weeks in the month where we have so much energy and we can hustle the crap out of that week. And there are going to be weeks where we need to chill out a little more because of our level. So that's like actually a really critical part for female entrepreneurs, is understanding how your cycle affects your energy levels and your work quality. However, if we scale it back, I won't go down that rabbit hole, but other people can go down it themselves. If we scale it back, and in general, I have no, I have learned the hard way by burning myself out in that cycle that I can't really do the hustle for any more than 2 months at any given time. So if I'm planning on a hustle period, I I frame it for myself. And I know that within that time, there's something else in my life that's gonna give. Maybe I'm not socializing as much with my friends. Maybe I'm asking my husband to be more in charge of like dinners and cleanup and things like that because I have more calls in the evening. He cooks all the time anyway, but I usually clean up. So maybe he's doing the dishes and cooking for a while. Um, or whatever it is, there's something that has to give in that period of time. So you're not continuing your normal lifestyle in that front load area. Um, but you are maintaining all of the critical things for your well-being. So I never sacrifice sleep. That's critical for me.
Okay. How on
Right.
average, how many hours do you get a night?
I get between not about 9.
That is a strong sleep.
Yeah.
So how okay, I don't mean to completely but it seems like time management would be a very base you said you're doing a 2-hour block. If you're a female entrepreneur, make sure you have like your cycle understanding. Like it seems like a lot of this is about time management. What is your big time management see? Because it seems like you're very, very good at this.
That is so funny. I wish I'm gonna send that to my mom after. "Look, Mom, I am good at it. I was too far. Like, terrible." Um, I'm gonna go back to my very original answer when you first asked the question. It's understanding your specific cues in your body.
Mm,
So there are very particular physical feelings or thoughts that will come up for me that are an immediate indicator it's time for me to take a break. And I don't mind sharing those because they're actually quite common for people.
please,
So
especially the thought one, because I don't think a lot of like you mentioned, having that era of being in tune and listening to yourself. What are thoughts that someone would have to hear before? I'm sure there's a thought that you have before you have a physical pain that says, "Hey, man, you might want to slow down." So yes, please do share.
yeah. So there's a couple for myself um that are like basically tell me I've already gone too far. And those are if I wake up in the morning and I immediately think, oh no. We've all had those days. Like we've all had those days where we wake up, we go, oh, is the first thing that you want to do when you wake up. That's an immediate sign for me that day, like I am not putting it off. That day I am taking at least an hour for myself, whether that means I'm taking a nap or I'm going for a walk in nature, or I'm sitting down with a non-business related book, or like, but there's an hour where I am just being with myself that day. Another for myself, a thought pattern that will crop up when I'm creeping up toward being too far gone is I just can't. If that thought comes into my mind immediately, I'm like, all right, there's something happening in my body that's not responding well to my environment. Um, I think those are probably the two big ones in terms of thought. And so that's a really good place for people to start if they've never done this kind of work for themselves. But the real goal is to be so in touch with your body that you can catch it before the thoughts kick in, because the thoughts are going to be a symptom that comes up after you're already wrecked.
How does one get more in touch with their body? I let's call me Mr. Joe Schmo Jim Doofenshmirtz, right? Mr. Joe Schmo Jim, like right. I think that I'm gonna go outside. I'm gonna pump some weights. I'm eating healthy. I don't necessarily still have that in tune with my body. How does one truly center and in tune themselves with their body?
There's a particular breathing practice that I teach people that is really helpful and is really simple. So all you do is choose a part of your body. It does not matter what body part. It could be your big toe, it could be your pinky, it could be your knee, it could be your throat. It doesn't matter. And you bring all of your attention to that area. And as you breathe, you visualize the breath filling and exiting that area.
I'm gonna take my palm. I feel like is palm a good one? I feel like that's
Anything at all. And so close your eyes and then breathe in through your nose and just imagine your palm filling with breath. And as you exhale, imagine it emptying. And do you notice anything about the sensations in your palm as you're doing that with the breath?
kind of feels like it tickles.
And so you can just leave it at that, or you could then use that does so much for your body to settle the mind. So you can go from that, okay, my palm is tingling, it feels cold or it feels warm. And then you're kind of in your body. And from there, you can do a generic check and actually say to your body, show me where the tension is right now. And the very first thing you sense in your body, without question or without analyzing, you just send breath to that part. And you can you could do that for 2 minutes or you could do it for an hour straight. And if you continue doing that over time, and this is a lot of the work that I do with people, it's helping them understand and relate to and frame these feelings in a way that they can work with it throughout their day. But the more you do that, the more you're going to understand your own needs.
So how have you been able to translate this and get high level executives to understand something just like 'cause I feel like the person that's type A that's like zooming all around, like I need to do is would at least from my opinion, probably because I have a bias because me, I'm a very for I loosened up a bit over the past couple of years, but especially like 3, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I was very anti I don't wanna call it energy, but I just call it like the law, kind of like, oh, like cheat, like because I came from like business where I understood like, yes, mindset does matter. Like looking at something glass half empty versus glass half full, that actually affects your actions. That can completely matter, changing your mind. But then when it got into like the meditation of things or like chakra or chi and some people do like the sage and sense and all that like sea moss and all that. Like once we got into like the yoga and that kind of stuff, I was like, that's that's
Okay.
that's where I'm gonna draw my line. And I guess my bias is that a lot of other type A executives would be like that, but I also feel like those are the ones that need that tuning. How have you been able to find the clientele and carve it out to be executive?
So the executives piece, honestly, like I come from a very entrepreneurial family. And like I mentioned before, the emotional environment of that wasn't ideal. And so I watched a lot of people who were really, really successful in business be really unsuccessful in their personal lives. And that's kind of how I ended up in this passion for working with business owners and executives.
Oh, so my
I'm not.
no, listen, no. It's a joke. A little dark humor for the pod.
I don't know.
But no, like very much. If you, I can completely sure you relate if you understand that both your parents were business owners, especially if your father was the type of business owner that was around when our parents were in their prime, when they were trying to do business. I'm sure you can understand the type of person that they had to be during that particular era. Now, how long has it been something that you've been doing? You mentioned you got started at Reiki at 23. How long has it been going now for?
Yeah. So, and I will circle back to your question about how I got those high level type A people. I'll do that first and then I'll answer your second question. So, in terms of getting kind of high stress, high level type A personality to slow down enough, it takes two things. One is the science behind it. And I do a lot. I used to work in a neurofeedback clinic working with military veterans with PTSD. So it often helps for me to pull out my neuro background and explain to people what's happening in their brainwave, how that's impacting their ability to hit targets and how to create new things for their business. Like, it's actually really unhelpful for business growth to be stuck in a high, fast-paced thought process. So I go through the science on that. The other thing is honestly just like a firm hand. Sometimes I have to tell people to stop. And one of the conversations I have before I start working with people is like, I'm going to tell you things that you're not going to particularly like, or they might make you feel really uncomfortable in the moment. Like, I had a conversation recently where I said, you've been doing the work and you've been, maybe doing the assignments, but you haven't applied any of it to your real life and your real relationship. So we can talk about this till we're blue in the face, but until you start putting yourself out there to be vulnerable enough to practice it in real life, nothing's going to change. That made Dan. Like, what? Now that sounded probably quite harsh for people who are listening and they don't understand the background in that.
No, listen, as a type A person, I need that direct, 'cause anything else feels like, oh, this is just BS. It's fluky, right?
Yeah.
Like, that direct feedback is something, at least for me, I feel like I need, like almost like a coach, right? I feel like a lot of time, now you can correct me if I'm wrong. When we think about coaching, one of the very first things that we think about coaching is going to relate to sports. And when we think about sports, we think about, wow, we're getting in your face, we're yelling, we got to get the play done, execute, do it until it's done. And then we've taken that, especially because I'm sure you see a lot of business owners comparing business to sport all the time. And so then they're bringing in those attitudes of like Michael Jordan and berating other people and it being like you have to earn your stripes and all of this stuff. And business is the person that's in control is the person that's in control and call the shot. We shouldn't all be running and adhering to the same atmosphere of things. And so what are some of the things, what are some other things, I guess, that these high level executives are all over? So yeah, I love this. We're gonna have to do a part two because I love the way.
We'll do another episode.
Yes, we're gonna have to do another episode. Okay, so let's circle back. Getting a lot here. All right, so when you are working with these high level executives, what else do you have to get them to do to slow down?
So it's really quite funny. And I like that you mentioned earlier your resistance toward like the fluffy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because and this is where I really do pull on the science behind it. The fluffy stuff has so much science behind why it works. So there's one particular breathing technique that I teach everyone, which is similar to what we just did, but a little bit more in depth. And that's like, people have to do that 3 times a day. It only takes 5 minutes, but you're doing it at least 3 times a day. Another thing that I work up to, believe it or not, is journaling. And one of the reasons that is so helpful, no one wants to do it, first of all. So you're kind of forcing yourself into a new and uncomfortable place that's out of your comfort zone in order to heal. And the very nature of doing something outside of your comfort zone for your own well-being is actually really impactful in your overall self-image. But the other piece of it is the act of slowing down long enough to translate thought onto paper changes the brainwave, changes the processing mechanism that your brain is actually using, and genuinely engages the creative problem-solving areas of the brain in a way that allows you to gain new perspective that you cannot get through conversation or thought alone.
You are great. I'm glad you bring the science into this because I feel like the science is where it's like, okay, if it's backed by science, let's get with it. I love how knowledgeable you are. I can hear the science behind it, but you're not using all of like the science jargon to explain it. And it's like, I can completely understand exactly what is going on. How long did it take for you to get to that to refine that explanation for people to understand?
I would say in the past, let's see, 2018 is when I really started down the more neuroscience self-education. A lot of it is self-taught. I have a master's degree, but it's not in neuroscience. It's in psychology, counseling psychology. It's totally different. Um, so I did a lot of reading and research on my own for the research gurus. Yes, I was reading other people's research, not doing my own research. But so it's been a process. I've been in that pretty heavy for about 6 years. And I would say within the first 2 years is when I was feeling like really confident in my ability to express it to people in a way that helped them understand why it would work for them. Like I said, I was working primarily with military veterans with PTSD. And because of some of the cognitive challenges that can come with heavy trauma, like it's really difficult to process words sometimes. It's really difficult to hang on to key points. It was really important for me to be able to speak it or write it in a way that landed with them so that
Okay.
they would actually apply it for themselves. So I was really lucky in the sense that the audience I was working with at the time required those concise explanations, and so it really helped craft the way that I was able to share it with people.
And we have been truly blessed, I feel that, to have you on today. I'm going to say the best Reiki podcast we've done so far. Want to get into some more tactical things. We are an entrepreneurship podcast. We love to get into tacticalness of things. Let's not discount the fact that you did grow a six-figure business. What has been like the key distribution outlets for growing your business? Like, is it Facebook ads? Like, what key distribution channels or marketing have you done to grow to six figures?
I love this question. Um, so genuinely connecting one-on-one in networking events. Uh, Not like in-person networking events, but have been involved in different online, just connecting with people, sharing with people what I do, talking to people about what they do, and creating like referral networks. I have used social media in the past, and I've actually found I have my own energetic opinions on what's going on here. But when I actively am like putting energy into social media, my business drops.
Okay.
And
Interesting.
I think it's because I find it so exhausting that my energy drops and that gets responded to in like,
Okay. Okay. So you've been primarily doing in-person networking media and building up a referral base. So like a word of mouth, which for the interns as call earned media. Word of mouth is earned media. You are earning the referrals and the word of praise that you are getting.
there. I've never heard that. I like that. Hmm.
Absolutely. So before
That's pretty much how it's been. And it's similar but a little bit different, like referral partners. So in my counseling practice, I've had a couple of really close relationships with doctors, nurse practitioners, medical folk who we have kind of a client care agreement where they, not now because I don't have the space for it, but they would send me counseling clients specifically, and we would kind of be able to work together on those cases. So connecting with people who understand the value of what you do and who work with similar people but on different problems, that's been really helpful. And then also just like not being afraid to be visible, not being afraid to connect with new people, um, and trusting that when you're in a room, like one of my biggest goals as a business owner has always been to put myself in a room where I'm the least successful person there.
agreed, totally agreed. All right. So we have about 10 minutes left. one of the things I want to normally do is we have like a big rapid fire conversation. What I'd like to do is ask you questions from the interns themselves, that they each kind of prepared. So each intern has already prepared a question. I already have like them kind of listed. If they'd like to come off camera to ask the question, they can. However, we'll go down the line starting with Jake, because that's the first person to be on my camera. If you'd like, Jake, you can come off camera briefly, introduce yourself, and ask a question. Jake, you there?
Oh, yes. Sorry. I'm trying to find. Alright. Um, basically, I would say, huh, kind of put
Introduce
the
yourself
spot.
first, and then go ahead.
Um, Hi, my name is Jake. What I wanted to ask you was, I don't know. I kind of forgot what I was gonna say. I'm sorry.
Nope, it's okay. We have the sheet. Um, I don't know if it was specifically your question, but it's going to be your question for right now, I guess. How to maintain your mental health while growing your business?
Oh, so I would circle back to what I had answered earlier when we were talking about really connecting with your physical body and noticing what symptoms or signs or cues are being given. That's a really important part. Another really important part of me maintaining my mental health is having people around me who love and support me unconditionally, but do not accept me when I am falling off whatever important things are going on. So, like, my husband is amazing. He doesn't doubt anything that I do. But if I start lacking on things around the house, like if he notices that I'm not helping out with cleaning up, or if I'm not taking the dog out for walks like I say I'm going to, he knows that the cue that I'm burning myself out and he calls me on it. So knowing yourself and having people who are willing to hold you accountable.
Absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for that answer, JC. And again, the interns, you should be holding each of your, not only yourselves, but each other accountable, because we're all doing this together. All right, next down the list, we have Nylani. Like, come and introduce yourself, where you're calling in from, college you're going to, and your question.
Hello. My name is Nailani. I'm an upcoming sophomore at Louisiana State University. I'm currently studying mass communications, the concentration in digital advertising. And my question was, I know you said that you got a master's degree in psychology, and I also know that you stated in your bio that you had a health incident that kind of sparked your interest in spirituality. So was it psychology that sparked your interest or that health incident, or did the two coincide with one another?
Yeah, the two coincided completely. So I have multiple autoimmune disorders that I've been diagnosed with. And as part of my healing process and journey, what I came to understand was that there's really no separation between mental health and physical health. A decrease in one causes a decrease in the other, and vice versa is also true. So as I started to become more familiar with how mindset and emotional regulation could heal my body from the autoimmune disorders, um, I kind of was able to bring all of that into one and meld it, and I work with all those different modalities.
Thank
So
you for
have it. I didn't realize how much mental health could affect your physical well-being, um, in regards to like the black spots, like having like, like weddings, like actual physical things outside of just being tired. So that was a big thing that I definitely learned. Next on my list, we have Claudia. Jump on for a quick, brief second. Introduce yourself, the college you're going to, and your question.
Hi, my name is Claudia. I'm a senior at the University of Illinois, and my question is, how has Reiki shaped your viewpoints on modern medicine?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm not sure how to answer that in short form. So my overall experience has massively shaped my viewpoint. The energy work, the neuroscientific work, the PNI system, if anyone's really interested in how your stress levels affect everything in your body, it's the psychoneuroimmunology system in your body. You can look that up. And also, I was on a high level of various pharmaceuticals from a very young age because of the autoimmune disorders that I had been diagnosed with. My personal experience with that has been that the modern medical system does not take into account the environment, the stress, and the requirement that humans have for overall healing. I'm flat out not a fan of how Western medicine is practiced or the way that pills are prescribed prior to healing attempts. I'm not saying that no one should ever use modern medicine. It does save lives. And if your leg is broken, you definitely want to go to a hospital. But the way that it's used to just cover up symptoms that are truly there trying to help you become a better version of yourself. Yeah, not a fan. But I won't go any further down the hole right now.
No, listen, I have slowly begun to question modern medicine. I am a huge fan of Grey's Anatomy. Started watching that recently, and I watched I believe it was like more of a reenact doc, like a dramatization, but I've seen a couple of different mini docs or doc series on the opioid pandemic, and how brutal and massive that was. Just the fact that they will flat out lie to you to sell you something to make more money makes you have to question other certain aspects of things. Obviously, yes, there are like a lot of things that we should be doing. If you are like, if I get very, very sick, I'm going to take NyQuil. If I get very, very hurt, I'm going to use ibuprofen. But if I have like cough or I usually would try to do something like sweat it out or tea, but it has made me question. I'm not a converter, but I have questioned modern medicine, especially when you have to question if a doctor is being, does a doctor get cut for prescribing you a certain type of medication versus something else, right? So not only does it have to necessarily, it doesn't have to necessarily be, holistic versus modern medicine. It could be, Dr. A modern medicine versus Dr. B modern medicine, so
Absolutely.
it could be even something like that. So think that's big
A
question.
friend of mine often says everything can be medicine and everything can be poison. It depends on how it's used and why it's used. And yeah, I mean, in terms of modern medicine, I just say like you can follow the money and it'll give you a lot of answers about where you're at. And also, I think people get extremely dogmatic on this topic. Like, it's kind of the modern day religious war.
Right.
And there's conversations that can be had in really open, honest, respectful ways where we can all work together to help people heal.
I agree. I do agree. Thank you so much for sharing that. We do have our last intern, Savannah. Introduce yourself, where you're from and where you're calling in from, and college, and your question.
Okay. Oh, hi. My name is Savannah. I'm a recent graduate of the University of Chicago, but I'm based in New York now. And I was wondering, so I guess in pursuing entrepreneurship, it can be quite stressful. That's no surprise to anyone. So I'm wondering, as far as what you practice every day with healing and stress relief, how did you, I guess, blend these practices while creating and starting your business?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is having faith, and that can mean whatever it means for any individual person. I actually saw a post the other day and it said, if you ever want to trust your faith in God, become an entrepreneur. And I have never seen anything so true. So trusting that if you follow your own inner guidance or divine guidance, that it will take you to a better place, no matter how much of a squeeze it might feel like right now. That's been so foundational for me in getting through the difficult parts of building a business. And The other thing that has been really critical is learning how to ask for help from people who are like better in areas than I am. I don't do book well. I don't do tech well. I'm really good at what I'm really good at, but I have learned to delegate. And there was another thing that just popped into my head and then popped back out. Faith, delegation, and understanding the vision, like why, truly who, like how you're making the world better by what you're doing. That will get you through so many what feel like crises in the entrepreneurship journey.
Thank you so much. That was really inspiring.
Thank you so much, Jacie. You have been an amazing guest today. I'm sure you weren't expecting this complete curveball of a type of thing, but listen, we have got to do another episode. I've learned so much, and I think that just the conversation that we had was absolutely amazing. And there could be now, I think there could be a mutual synergy there with how we go about things. Let's talk offline with that. One of the things that we like to do before we always officially get somebody off the show is we have to ask them a question, just based on the conversation and how that conversation flows. So it's not a pre-made question, something that we kind of came up with. It's a question that I have personally formulated for you throughout the course of this conversation as we've talked about different things, right? And so my question to you is, in the gaining of your psychology degree, right? Did it enhance or did it make you question what you have previously learned? Because you have mentioned that a lot of things have to be unlearned, right? So when you're learning about these new techniques, when you're learning about breathing, when you then get into the mind and psychology, as you mentioned, you have your master's in psychology, what would you say are things that you had to just unlearn about life that are pretty common fallacy, I guess, if they're wrong?
So yeah, in gaining that degree, there was I developed a lot of discernment. That's the key thing. So, and what I mean when I say discernment is this right for me and the people that I will be working with? Because so the thing that I had to unlearn the most is this belief that anyone sees things the same way that I do, or that you do, or that anyone else that's been in this conversation does. And if we can change the perspective from trying to find like agreement all the time, or, getting people on our side or having them see it our way, unlearning that tendency to want to make people agree with you completely changes the way you're able to have a conversation, whether it's with a podcast host or a client or a business partner or a spouse. And the deeper that I was able to go into my own experience, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, the more facets of myself I actually got to meet. And when you start to meet all these different facets of yourself, you become far more interested, curious, and accepting about all the different facets that everyone else has to offer.
Okay. I guess I could use that then, because the reason I even have that question is there because I can be debated, argumentative, whatever word you'd like to use. So before we officially go, the very last thing that we always like to do is, Jacie, where can we find, so how do I pronounce it?
Anam Sayer.
Anam Sayer. Where can we find Anam Sayer? What are the courses that you offer? Talk about this 12-week Redefine program. Give us a little short spiel.
Yes. So my website just got launched yesterday, anamsayer.com. It's actually up. I'm so excited about it. And there's a bunch of things on it now that I have to go in and fix. But it's up now. So you can contact me through that. And Redefine is a 12-week program that I've put together. I get a small group of solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, business owners, and we walk through the tools that you and I talked about today and help guide people into meeting these new facets of themselves and redefining what success looks like for them, and really helping people gain insight to that voice so that they can hear it for themselves, so that they know what their larger vision is and that they can start to act in alignment with their calling, whether that's in their personal lives or in their business. It can be applied anywhere. Typically, people see some pretty cool quantum leaps in their businesses when they start to do the work. So I also do offer one-to-one coaching, but that's kind of like, it's not, but it's in that C-suite level.
Okay.
Well, listening to their,
Some people want to focus on one-to-one.
yeah, I do have one-to-one, which I'm happy to talk to people about. And it's like a year-long, really deep dive into yourself and your emotions and your psyche. It's very vulnerable, but it's very transformative.
All righty. Do you have any webinars, anywhere you're speaking at, any events coming up?
I have a number of podcasts that I've got in the books for the next few weeks, and that's all as of now. But I'm going to start putting them. I'm going to have a podcast page on my website where all the podcasts that I do are linked right on the website.
All righty. So if you guys would like to go check out Jake Target, or would like any kind of one-on-one coaching, or would like to join the 12-week Redefine program, please use the description link in the bio below. Wherever you're calling in from, if you're on YouTube, it's going to be in the description. If you're on Spotify, it's going to be in the bio. If you are on Instagram, it's going to be in my bio link as well. So check that out, everybody. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll make sure that we have another conversation. Ramblers, can't wait to ramble with you again.